Velkommen alle sammen! Here we're continuing the series where we go over the true meanings of the Norse gods and deities. Check out my playlist on the channel, I've done about 30 of these now, but today we are speaking about Ullr, the archery and ski god and the stepson of Thor in the Norse myths. Now, many of the deities are very clear as to what they represent, and the scholars agree on some of the interpretations. Ullr is not one of these. We know very little about him, and I have not read any theories about what he represents. I have a pretty good idea that I'm going to go over at the end of the video, but let me know what you guys think. That's why I make these videos, is so we can all put our heads together and discover the lost beliefs of our people. So first, on to the translation. Ullr doesn't really mean anything in Old Norse, but its cognate in the much older Proto-Germanic is vulthus, meaning glory. There are other Germanic languages with cognates of meaning of a similar thing, like you see here. This is also related to Proto-Indo-European vitus, I don't know how, if I'm pronouncing that right, but meaning appearance. So I'm not quite sure what the connection there, but let me know if you guys have thoughts. Anyway, on to the attestations. Ullr is not mentioned much in our mythological texts. First and most reliable is that he comes in the Poetic Edda, Grimnismal poem, where he is said to live in Ullr, the yew valleys, yew tree valleys. Very interesting because yew trees were what was used mostly to make bows and other weapons too, even skis. So there are very vague and metaphorical mentions of Ullr, as you can see here. Very unclear because it's, of course, heavily symbolic. But some have suggested that the attestations like this are related to the famous fire gazing, a method of divination and perhaps even a real ritual that humans did. Another brief mention of Ullr comes in Attestations, mentioning Ullr's ring in here. Again, very vague, but this is an oath swearing, and others have believed that Ullr here is also associated with some sort of ceremony. Next we see Ullr in the less reliable Prose Edda, but here we get a little bit more information about this deity, especially that he is beautiful to look at, as well as he has all the characteristics of a warrior. And it was also good to call on him for duels. So that's very interesting, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. We also find brief mentions of Ullr in skaldic poems as a kenning or metaphor for things like you see here. That's about it, but we also have something called the Torsberg Chape, which is a very old runic inscription speaking about how a servant or priest of Ullr was well honored, like you see here. We can also speak about all the place names that involve Ullr. Now, a lot of the historians say that these types of things mean that he was the main god worshipped at these places, and that's a bunch of garbage. A place name is exactly that. It's a place name. It proves absolutely nothing about the worship. All it does is suggest a possibility. Some of these places were named long after pagan times, and some of them were very old, but we can't say that all of them reflect a place where Ullr was the patron god or something like that. The only thing that we can really be sure of about Ullr in the myths and these place names and these runic inscriptions is that Ullr and the understanding of him is very, very old. The understanding of him was long before the Viking Age. That's the only thing that we can really be certain about. That being said, on to the theories. And remember, there are no established theories about Ullr, none that I've read at least. I'm just speaking about an idea that I have, something that connects the dots, but let me know your thoughts. For me, I think it's most likely that Ullr is a tree or even a forest spirit, some spiritual energy stored inside certain trees. We see this all over the world in pagan cultures, that trees especially had spiritual energy attached to it. They were believed to have a consciousness and a spirit by very primitive cultures. Now, as a culture gets a little more advanced, those tree spirits become gods and they start to be worshipped as such. This is a classic example of how cultures evolve from animism to polytheism, and that's exactly what I think Ullr is. I don't think he's a forest god, because that is pretty obviously Vidar to me, Odin's son. But I think Ullr represents a certain tree or a type of tree. The yew tree makes the most sense. He was said to live in Ullr, Yew Valley. He is the god of bow and skis, which were also very often made from the yew tree. We also had a few sacred trees in the Norse and Germanic beliefs. There were many of them, but 2 were so sacred that they actually named runes after them. You know these. Bjarkan is one, and the other one is Ullr, the yew tree. Also, other types of weapons were sometimes made from the yew tree. Also remember that Ullr was a god that was said to be good to pray to for success in combat, so it does for sure seem like there was believed to be some sacred spiritual energy stored in the yew tree that could also be used for weapons and also invoked for success in combat, and also explains why he is beautiful to look at, because these trees are very beautiful. And it also explains how the much older version of Ullr's name meant glory, that this yew tree, the spirit in the yew tree, was associated with victory and glory. And finally, the fact that Ullr is the son of Siv. Siv is the earth goddess. Done a couple videos on her. Not the earth as a whole, but more like the ground and the soil, that type of earth. And her hair being, of course, golden wheat. This has been pretty well agreed upon by the historians. Siv also has many children, some of them with Thor, and some of them with unknown fathers, but all of her children have to do something that comes out of the earth. So Ullr being a yew tree makes the most sense to me. But again, let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comments. That's all I have to say for today. Vi ses nästa gång.